Today I'm going to be live staking in some additional trees to replace some of the ones that have been taken out. I want to show you that process, not only what I've planted some 20 years ago, but also what I planted last year, so you can get an idea of the progression and just how rapidly and quickly this stuff will grow. It's one of the very first that I put onto the property, and it used to be pollarded to about head height, but throughout the years I've brought it down a little bit more at a time. But each year this will get out tremendous amount of growth off of here, and I'll be able to cut these canes off and feed it to my sheep and or cows. Poplar trees are so incredibly vigorous and easy to propagate from cutting that you almost can't go wrong. And I've taken trees larger than this one right here and cut it flush at ground level and just dug a hole, stuck it in the ground, and it struck root. And I've actually still got trees on the other side of my property that I did that to that are still growing to this day, and that was several years ago. To maximize your success when choosing your cuttings, try to avoid stuff that's established and already barked out. The majority of the growth hormone is going to be in these young tender canes. And one thing I'd like you to note is if you look toward the end of the cane, you'll see that's where all the bud swell is, and that's where the leaves will appear first. If we follow that cane down, we still have nodes, but there's not nearly the bud swell because the majority of it is toward the tip. And if you select your cuttings from the tip, you'll maximize the amount of growth hormone that you're putting in the ground. One of the things that I like to do is to make sure I get at least 3 nodes into the ground, but it really depends on the height of the cane, because I also like to make sure I get at least about 1/3 of the length of the cane in the ground to maximize stability so that it's not going to blow over in the winter storms. Take another look at that bud swell as we move down that cane. You can see it kind of fade out as we get down lower. But make no mistake, we can cut any of this on this poplar and it's going to strike root. All of the trees established along this line that I planted some years ago were from no more than something about this size. So 10 inches long, about 1/8 to 1/4 inch in diameter. I prefer to plant these as I cut them, but if you're not going to be planting them right away, you can just take and stick the cut in down into a bucket, and I've left them in there for up to a week or more, and they'll strike root no problem. Now these are some trees that I took out today. They were probably 30 feet in height or so, and I wanted to bring them down to a more manageable level, so I've got them about 3.5 feet from ground level. And these will all start to send out shoots in the spring, and then by summertime I'll be able to pull off of these and use that for fodder. When I do take them out like this, I can also use them for firewood. Poplar is not really a great firewood per se, but it is a resource that you can utilize, and it's great to have on your property. This isn't even anything that I've planted. This is just something that's suckered up from a root that has been sent out kind of close to the ground. That's the one downside I would say to these, is that they do send out surface roots that can become problematic, particularly if you put them in places where you don't want things growing. If it's in a wet area, it's going to seek that water out. So you really just need to be cognizant about where you're planting these and for what purpose are you planting them. I can cut these into 12-inch sections and stick them into the ground, and each one of them is going to grow a tree eventually. See, this is just coming off of a root. So I'll pull this whole thing out. So a person could take something like this that has multiple canes on it and cut each one of these canes into multiple sections and get a tree out of each one of them. I have so much of this that I'm going to maximize the turnaround time as far as the growth, and I'm going to take this cane here is probably about a 5-foot long cane. I'm going to take and stick this in its entirety into the ground. That's just going to accelerate the process of me getting something. You could take and cut this into multiple pieces, and each one would produce a tree for you. With something of this size, you're going to want your hole a little bit deeper just to provide enough stability so that this doesn't blow over in the wintertime when you're going through storms and whatnot. I like to water it in initially because the plant itself has undergone stress in the process, and that kind of helps to reduce that amount of stress, but it also helps the soil to work its way in completely around this cane. Make a hole, down in, backfill. That's all there is to it, guys. This could not be easier. In fact, I want to show you some trees that I planted when we first moved into the property. And those came from canes that were probably about this size, about that diameter. And I want to show you what these trees look like today. All of the trees along this driveway were all planted at the same time. I believe this was 2001 when these were planted, because it was the year after we first moved in. And these eucalyptus here, those were super small as well. And here's one of those poplars that was planted that same year. And they were probably planted from something, as I said before, about this size, stuck in the ground. And each year I wind up pulling off of these trees to feed my sheep, feed my cows. It's mostly eucalyptus and poplar lining this driveway, with a few other ornamentals sprinkled in, but left unchecked, that's what you will have. You can coppice them, you can pollard them, and continually get a harvest on them. Sometimes one of these trees will just up and die on you. And all trees are susceptible to different pressures. All trees have a specific life cycle. And depending on where you plant them and what other environmental risk factors that you have in your area, it could cause your trees to have issues. And when I get a tree that winds up just all of a sudden dying on me, I don't really worry too much about it, because I'll just take it out, use it for firewood, and put another one in its place. This is a hybrid willow that I took some cuttings from about a month and a half ago and live staked in over on the other side, using that same simple, just stick a hole in the ground and stick about 3 or 4 nodes in the ground. I watered them in that day. They've been receiving rainwater, and I want to show you what they look like. These were all cut just below a node, and then about 3 of these nodes were stuck in the ground. So where each one of these leaves is leaving out, they're going to be striking root at that point. Plus they'll probably strike root at that cutting point. But I've got several along this line that are all waking up. Fodder trees are a great way to reduce your overall feed costs and provide some additional nutritional supplementation to your livestock. We're always looking at alternatives and ways to reduce our overall dependency from outside sources and try to feed our animals as much as we can right here from our own property. Really nice to have that perennial source every year that we can depend upon. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.